If you're a Libra Sun, you've probably been called indecisive, people pleasing, superficial, conflict avoidant, and fake so many times that people treat your entire person. Don't do that. Don't do that, Screech. Okay, thank you. Mercury retrograde is something else, isn't it? Isn't it? It has nothing to do with Mercury retrograde, it more has to do with all of us. Like, I know my HDMI cord is bad. So it's like, don't blame it on the Mercury. Blame it on you not getting a new HDMI cord. Anyway, moving along. Sorry, you Libras. A lot of people will treat your entire personality like it's one long performance of diplomatic avoidance. They act like your need for balance is weakness, your consideration for others is manipulation, and your ability to see multiple perspectives is just you being unable to commit to anything real. But here's what they're missing. Your sun sign isn't a character flaw or failure to have opinions. It's your developmental assignment shaped by the seasonal conditions you were born into. And Libra season falls at the autumn equinox, roughly September 23rd through October 22nd, when day and night are exactly equal in length. This is the only point in the year where light and dark are in perfect balance before the descent into winter begins. And this isn't about being wishy-washy or fake. It's about being born into the season that teaches equilibrium, relational intelligence, aesthetic harmony, and the specific kind of wisdom that comes from understanding that everything exists in relation to something else. So, what people call Libra traits are actually equinox survival strategies. And I want to correct the misunderstanding. So, if your sun is in Libra, here are 10 things people get wrong about you. Number one, people think you're indecisive when you're actually weighing all variables before committing. See, the indecisive accusation is probably what Libras hear the most, and it fundamentally misunderstands what you're doing when you take the time to decide. You're not unable to make decisions, you're just unwilling to make premature ones. And the equinox is that moment of perfect balance, which means you're born into the season that understands that choices have weight on both sides. So when you're deciding something, you're not just picking what you prefer, you're considering consequences, impacts, trade-offs, and the decisions that affects everyone involved. You can see the full spectrum of outcomes, and yes, that takes time. So rushing a choice means ignoring variables that matter, and you don't want to do that. So the people who call you indecisive are usually people who make snap judgments and deal with the consequences later, though they may think that speed equals decisiveness. But you know that good choices requires information, perspective, and consideration. And what they call indecisiveness is actually you doing the evaluative work that leads to sustainable choices. You're not stalling, you're calibrating. Number two, people think you're people pleasing when you're actually maintaining social equilibrium. See, people pleasing suggests that you have no self and you just mirror what everybody else wants. But that's not what you're doing. You're maintaining equilibrium in social systems. Well, see, the equinox is that point, and it's the balance point between extremes. So you're wired to notice when things are tipping too far in one direction and you will adjust to restore balance. So when you accommodate someone, you aren't erasing yourself. You're contributing to collective harmony. When you consider other people's needs, you're not abandoning your own, you're recognizing that your needs and their needs exist in the same system and both matter, which is, I think, intelligence, not weakness. The problem is that some people mistake equilibrium for self abandonment. They'll think that if you're not constantly asserting yourself, that you must not have a self. But you do. You just understand that self exists in relation to others, not in opposition to them. So, what people call people pleasing is actually you maintaining the social balance that allows everyone to coexist. Number three, people think you're superficial when you're actually understanding that form carries meaning. You see, the being superficial accusation, I think it comes up because you care about the way things look. You care about your aesthetics, your presentation, but you're not superficial. I think you're more so in tune to the relationship between form and content because the equinox is the moment when outer conditions reflect the inner balance. So you understand that how something appears is part of what it is, not separate from it. And you care about beauty because beauty is another form of harmony. So when something is aesthetically pleasing, it means all the elements are in like the right relationship to each other pretty much, which is not necessarily shallow. I think that's you recognizing that form is information. I like that. Form is information. Anyway, how something looks tells you just about how well it's functioning for your perspective. So the people who call you superficial usually got some unresolved discomfort with caring about appearance, which would also kind of be me. They'll think that substance and style are opposites, when really they're two aspects of the same thing. You know that presenting something well will honor its content. So what they call superficial could actually be you understanding that aesthetic coherence is kind of a form of respect. Number four, people think you're conflict avoidant when you're actually just trying to seek some resolution over the escalation. See, a lot of people really think that Libras will run from conflict, but I don't think you're avoiding conflict. I just think you're avoiding unnecessary escalation. You ain't trying to make it go bigger, okay? Because the equinox is a time that holds tension and balance. So you'll do the same thing. You can handle conflict fine. What you can't handle is conflict that destroys the relationship instead of resolving the issue. Because when tension rises, you'll look for the path that will address the problem without making some type of permanent damage. So you'll de-escalate not because you're scared, but because you're strategic. I like that too. Not because you're scared, but because you're strategic. Most conflicts aren't actually about the thing that people are fighting about. That's what people always say. You're not really fighting about the toothpath. Never talk. Not really talking about the toothpaste off the cap. That's not really what the fight is about. What is deeper? And you understand that most conflicts aren't actually what the thing that people are fighting about. They're about feeling unheard or disrespected. So you'll address the underlying issue instead of getting stuck in the surface argument. And so the people who call you conflict avoidant usually equate conflict, I think, with combat. They'll think that if you're not fighting, that you're weak. But you know that resolution requires staying in relationship and that being combative ends relationships. So what they call avoidance is actually you choosing sustainable resolution over some type of temporary dominant. Number five, people will think that you're fake when you're actually just adapting your presentation to different contexts. See, I really do think that the fake accusation is harsh. And I think it really misreads your social intelligence because I don't think you're being fake. I think you're being contextually appropriate because the equinox is that transition point between the seasons. So you're more so built to understand that different situations are going to require different energies, which is not phoniness, that's sophisticated social calibration. You'll show different aspects of yourself in different contexts because that's how functional social systems work. And you took a little bit of a feather in the cap from Virgo just a second ago, okay? So you're warmer with friends, you're more professional at work, and you're more diplomatic with your family, which is not being two-faced. That's understanding that relationships have different needs and you will show up appropriately for each one. So the people who will typically call you fake are usually people who will form authenticity by being the same in every context, regardless of if it's appropriate. They'll think that being consistent means you'll never adjust, but you know that real authenticity is being genuinely responsive to what each situation requires. So what they'll call fake is actually you having the social intelligence to meet people where they are. Number six, people think you have no opinions when you're actually holding multiple perspectives simultaneously like a boss, okay? Because I think this one drives Libras crazy because they absolutely have opinions. The most opinionated people I know are Libras, okay? And my daughter is one of them. You just have the ability to understand opposing viewpoints without abandoning your own because the equinox is the balance points where both, and this reminded me a lot of like my other friend who has my daughter's same birthday actually. But you guys have this ability to understand opposing viewpoints without abandoning your own, even if it doesn't feel like it. The equinox is that balance point where both day and night are equally real. And you're the same way. You can hold contradictory truths at the same time. So when you say, yeah, I see both sides, you're not saying you don't have a position. You're saying you understand the validity in multiple perspectives and that the situations is more complex than it is binary. And that's intellectual sophistication, not weakness. And most people, they can't do this. They think that if you understand the opposing view, that you must agree with it. But you don't confuse understanding with agreement. You can comprehend why someone thinks what they think, and you can still disagree with them. But you won't pretend that their perspective doesn't make sense to them. So, what people will call no opinions is typically you having more of a nuanced understanding than most people can tolerate. Number 7, people think you're dependent when you're actually understanding that autonomy actually exists within relationships. See, the dependency accusation, I really think it means like it assumes that you just can't function alone. But that's not true. You absolutely can function alone. You just don't prefer to. Because the equinox is that moment of balance between self and the other. So you're wired to understand that you're most yourself in relation to others, not in isolation from them. I feel like you guys learn a lot more in conjunction to somebody else than just you being by yourself. So you'll seek partnership because partnership allows you to see yourself more clearly. Other people will reflect aspects of you back that you can't access alone, which is not dependency. That's using relationship as a tool for self knowledge. And you're not incomplete without others. I think you're just more complete with them. So the people who call you dependent usually, I feel like, prize independence as this high virtue and will see having other people or needing other people as a weakness, but you don't. You know that humans are relational beings and that trying to be completely self sufficient is its own kind of limitation. So, what they call dependency is actually you understanding that connection is a strength, not a weakness. Number eight, people think you're passive aggressive when you're actually addressing issues indirectly to preserve the relationship. See, passive aggressive is what people call any communication style that is indirect confrontation. Like, if it's not directly up in your face. But you're not being passive aggressive. You're being diplomatic. And the equinox maintains the balance between without tipping into the extreme. So you address problems in ways that solve them without destroying the relationship in the process. So when you hint at an issue rather than directly attacking it and going head on, you're giving this other person or the other person a room to self correct without losing face, which is a kind of grace. Ooh, I like that, which is kind of a grace. Oh, listen, I'm on one today. Bars, no bars, okay? But anyway, um, when you suggest rather than you demand, you're kind of inviting cooperation instead of triggering defensiveness, right? Which is not manipulation. I think that's understanding how people actually change. Direct confrontation, yeah, it works for some people in some situations, but that's also not the only way to address problems. You can use indirect approaches when they're more likely to succeed. And the people who call you passive aggressive are usually people who think directness is always better, even if it makes things worse. So what they call passive aggressive could actually be you choosing the approach that's most likely to preserve both the relationship and the solution, which again I think is kind of a form of grace. Number nine, people think you're vain when you're actually maintaining external harmony as a reflection of your internal state. You see, the vanity accusation, I think it shows up because you care how you look, really. And you care about your environment and how that looks and the way things are presented. But I don't think you're vain. I think you're understanding that external harmony supports internal harmony because the equinox is when outer conditions they match the inner balance. So you maintain that principle in your same daily life. And when you spend time with your parents, I don't think you're being narcissistic. I think you're creating external conditions that reflects the internal state you're trying to maintain. I think that's why a lot of Libras end up becoming fashion designers. Because when your environment is beautiful and ordered, you feel balanced. And when you're presented well, you can engage with the world from like this place of confidence. And the people who call you vain are probably the people who think that if you care about the way you look, that's shallow. Because they've probably separated their inner and their outer when really they actually are connected. And you know that how you look and how you feel, they both can influence each other. So what they'll call vanity could actually be you maintaining the aesthetic harmony that ends up supporting your well-being. Number 10, people think you're non-committal when you're actually waiting for the right balance before locking in. See, the non-committal, it suggests that you're afraid of commitment, but that is definitely not the issue, I think. You're waiting for the right conditions, I think, before committing. Because the equinox is the moment where everything is balanced enough to support their transition into the next season. You're the same way. You commit when the balance is right, not when someone pressures you. You need to feel that a commitment is not going to tip your life too far in one direction. You need to know it's sustainable and fair. And I don't think that's fear. I think that's wisdom. A premature commitment that throws everything off balance isn't better than waiting for the right one, right? So the people who call you non-committal are probably people who commit pretty quickly and they go ahead and deal with the imbalance later, deal with the consequences later. They think that hesitation means you're not serious. But you know that commitment matters precisely because it has consequences. So what they call non-committal is actually you taking commitment seriously enough to wait for the right conditions. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're a Libra sun, you're not indecisive, fake, or weak. You're an equinox specialist, baby girl. You're built for balance, for relational intelligence, for aesthetic harmony, and the kind of wisdom that comes from understanding that everything exists in relationship to something else. And what people call your negative traits are actually sophisticated strategies for the season you were born into. Because you're not here to make some snap decisions that ignores the consequence. You're here to weigh all sides and to choose equilibrium. You're not here to be brutally honest at the expense of relationships. You're here to find the truth that preserves connections. You're not here to be completely independent. You're here to understand that the self is the most whole when it's in relationship with others. You see, the people who understand that your consideration isn't weakness, that is sophistication, that your diplomacy isn't fakeness, is social intelligence, that your desire for vanity for beauty isn't vanity, that is recognition what that harmony matters, and that your need for balance isn't indecision, it's calibration. The people who don't get you will keep asking you to pick a side, to commit faster, to care less about appearance, to be more direct. And you know what? Let them. You've got more important work to do, like maintaining the equilibrium that makes coexistence possible in the first place.